Hey everyone. Okay, this is gonna be a really fun one. This is I did the shock rock one earlier, shock rock previously. I'm gonna do glam now. If you didn't watch the shock rock one, I was talking about how it doesn't matter how good of a gimmick you have. If you have a gimmick, at the end of the day, if you don't have the music, your gimmick is just as much of a noose around your neck as it is a help. You know, it will hold you back as much as it will help you out without the music. There were some bands that were surprisingly not on the shock rock list. And then when I decided I was going to switch over to the other side and go glam, because Alice Cooper and David Bowie, the big inspirations of both shock rock and glam, I know there's other ones, folks, but we're going to go with the two big ones, okay? They both belong on both the shock rock list and the glam list at different time periods for different reasons. But when I went to go pull up a list of glam rock bands, it really gave me a very small list of glam rock bands. And I noticed all the metal bands were missing. And then I'm like, oh crap, really? So I had to go pull up a separate list for glam rock and glam metal. And then I'm like, crap, do I have to do this now and redo my shock rock? And thankfully, no, shock rock and shock metal are both classified. Technically, it's the same thing. So we're good to go there. So let's get into the glam era. Now, the glam that I specifically talk about in this regards when comparing shock rock, glam, and it doesn't matter how good your gimmick is if you don't have the music to back it up, is in relation to the LA metal bands. That's what spawned this whole thing, actually, was talking about Wasp and how their gimmick with the LA metal scene kind of, in the end, is partially what did them in. From my opinion, based off the first two albums, okay? All these little caveats in there. Okay, so without ado, the original glam era, Wikipedia here is classifying it as 71 to 76. We're going to do the bands in order. Some of these I don't know. A lot of these I don't know. Some of these I definitely know. Let's see how this goes here. Okay, so alphabetical order, we got ABBA, Angel, Arrows, Bay City Rollers. Okay, hold on. ABBA, no. Angel, no. Arrows, no. Bay City Rollers, yes. Blackfoot Sue, no. Mark Bolan, yes. David Bowie, yes. Chicory Tip, no. Alice Cooper, most definitely. Jane County, I think I've heard of. Donovan, yes, but I only know Donovan from his work with Alice Cooper. Doctors of Madness, Brian Eno, David Essex, Brian Ferry, Geordie, but I only know Geordie because I know that Brian Johnson of AC/DC fame was in Geordie at one point. I believe that's how Bon Scott discovered him, was when he was in Geordie, but I could be wrong on that. The Glitter Band, Gary Glitter, I believe that's both the same thing. Alex Harvey, Heavy Metal Kids, Hello Hollywood Stars. Oh, by the way, I do know who Gary Glitter is. Alex Harvey, Heavy Metal Kids, Hello Hollywood Stars, John Howard Hush, Iron Virgin, Japan, Jet. I don't think it's the same Jet. It's definitely not the same Jet that I've done reviews for. I didn't know, obviously, the two different bands that they're named Jet now. Jumper Raff, don't know any of those bands. Elton John, I know. Kenny, I do not know. Kiss, I do know. Magic Tramps, I do not know. New York Dolls, I do know. Nay, Monte Grosso, do not know. Metro, I do not know. Mott the Hoople, all the young dudes. Oh, hold on. All the young dudes carry the news. Okay, I know Mott the Hoople, at least one song. But I do not know. Paper Lace, I've heard of. Pilots, I do not know. Iggy Pop, I'm surprised it's in here. Susie Quattro, okay, that one surprised me a little to see that she was classified as glam. I would have thought I heard more as just kind of like a rocker, punk rocker maybe, but okay. Queen, that's another one where I guess makes sense. Lou Reed, Alistair Riddle, I don't know. Mick Ronson, that's David Bowie's guitarist, right? I believe so. So, yeah, okay, I guess I understand why they put them on here separately, I guess. Roxy Music, the Rubettes, I don't know Rubettes. Sickos and Mojados, don't know. Silverhead, don't know. Skyhooks, don't know. Slade, I do, and I've even done reviews for Slade. Silk, I have heard of, but I don't really know. The Tubes, Brett Smiley, I don't know. Spaceballs, nope. Sparks, no. Alvin Stardust, Steve Harley and Company Rebel, definitely not. Sweeney Todd, I know Sweeney Todd, but not in this context. Sweet, yes, and I've covered Sweet. T-Rex, get it on back and go! All right. Magnus Ugla, nope. Vodka Collins, nope. Wizard, I've heard of. Roy Wood, no. Zoller X, all right. That is original classic era glam, 71 to 76. That is glam rock. Then we got post-glam. Now, this is all under glam rock. The Ark, no clue. Darkness, yes. Doctor of the Medics, yes. Girl, I don't, maybe. Hanoi Rocks, only by name. Hot Leg, no. King Adora, no. The Malarde Paralysis, no. Negative, no. Prima Donna, I think I know by name, and the name sounds familiar. Pure Rubbish, no. Black Robin and IRS, yes. Space Hog, yes. The Struts, yes. Suede, yes. Super Groupies, I've heard of, but that's it. White Hot Odyssey, wow, really? That's funny. The reason I say that's funny is my band's name was The Howling Odyssey. Huh, never heard of White Hot Odyssey. Cool. All right, that is just rock. Now I'm going to go to the metal bands list. Except specifically the David Reese era, Aerosmith 87 to 2001. I would have said they were a glam rock band, not a glam metal band. I would never, ever put Aerosmith in the metal category. Ever. My God, it's horrible. Alias, I've never heard of. Alice in Chains. How the hell is Alice in Chains glam? In what world are they glam? Alien, I've never heard of. Or I've heard of, I don't know, sorry. Alley Cat Scratch, I don't know. Ampage, I don't know. Autograph. I know a little bit about Autograph. I don't. They definitely have that LA metal sound. Babylon AD, I know by name. Bad City, I know by name. Bad Company, 86 to 90. Really? Bad Company went glam? I don't know that era. I covered all their pre that era. Bad English, I know only by name. Bad for Good, I've never heard of. Bad Lands, just by name. Bangalore Choir, nope. Bang Panera, Bang Tango, I know by name. But I do remember that they were definitely in that category. Baron Cross, nope. Baton Rouge, nope. Beautiful Creatures, Beggars and Thieves, nope. Nuno Betancourt, should he just be in here with his band? But yeah, okay. Bitch as Betsy, I guess. I don't know. Billy Squire, okay. From what I know, if videos I saw in the 80s, okay, I guess Glam work. I don't know Black and Blue. Blackfoot, I already mentioned, I don't know. Is this specifically with Blackfoot? It's the Sealgo era? Black Veil Brides, okay. Black Veil Brides, I would say Black Veil Brides. I don't know enough about them, put them there. Blessed by a Broken Heart, don't know. Blondes, I don't know. Blood Good, nope. Blue Murder, nope. Atom Bomb, nope. Bon Jovi, yes. Bonfire, nope. Bottom, nope. Brain Donor, nope. Bride, nope. Brides of Destruction, I recognize the name. Brighton Rock, I only know it as a Kiss song. Brittany Fox, don't know. Bullet Boys, I remember the Bullet Boys, I guess they fall into that category. Candy Heartless, no. Casablanca, no. Child's Play, only as a movie. China, no. Cinderella, most definitely. Circus of Power, no. Contraband, no. Alice Cooper, late 80s, early 90s as glam metal. Ooh, I don't know, man. That was. If you're gonna, I mean, I guess Alice, they're being loose with the glam. He was more shock rock than glam at that time period. Alice's biggest glam period technically would have been the late 60s through the early 70s. The original band would have been the glam, as well as shock, both at the same time. David Coverdale, most definitely, but realistically should just be Whitesnake. Crash Diet, never heard of. Crazy Licks, I think I might have heard of. Crazy or Cry Wolf, don't know. Cycle Sluts from Hell, no, I think I've heard of them by name. That name rings a bell. DAD, Dad, Damn Yankees. I don't feel comfortable calling the Damn Yankees glam metal or glam rock. They definitely have that sound, and well, yeah, they all had hair, but they also had long hair, and they also took care of their hair. Outside of that, no, like there was no makeup, none of that stuff. It wasn't about being all fashionable. It was just about a bunch of guys going out there dressed in the regular street clothes, rocking it out. Danger, maybe Dangerous Toys, maybe The Darkness, yes. The Datsuns I've heard of, but I don't know. Def Leppard. This is another one, definitely the earlier period. I would love them a little more into glam because of the way they dressed and the way things looked in that time period and stuff like that. Overall, I don't want to call Def Leppard glam metal. I'd rather call them Nawabum. I hate to say it. If you have a choice between glam or Nawabum, I'd rather lump Def Leppard into Nawabum. I know most people would say I'm completely wrong on that, but they can kiss my ass. Diamond Knights, I don't know. Diamond Rex, I don't know. Diamonds, I don't know. That's DIE. Dirty Looks, I don't know. Dirty Penny, I think I might have heard of outside of a colloquialism. Oh man, I don't even know how to pronounce that one. Dulej Jagod, my apologies for the butcher. Demals, don't know. Dawkin, I know Dawkin. Dawkin, another one where I don't think the sound, yes. The sound only in the production, but overall, I would not put Dawkin into there. They're just an 80s metal band, prog metal band to a degree sometimes, but I don't feel glam metal's right for them. Easy Action, I don't know. Outside of the Alice Cooper album being called that. Electric Angels, don't know. Electric Boys, don't know. Enough's Enough, I recognize the name. Europe, I recognize the name, obviously. Every Mother's Nightmare, I don't know. Extreme, I definitely do. Ezo, I don't. Faster Pussycat, I recognize, but I don't know if I know any of their music. I don't know Fastway. Femme Fatale, I know as a term. Firehouse, my ex-wife was in a Firehouse. I don't know anything from them that I remember. Lita Ford, yeah. Freely's Comet. I have to pick up some Freely's Comet because I don't know if Freely's Comet technically belongs in there or not. You know, like just maybe because of the connection to Kiss, but outside that, if Ace, I don't know if Ace wore makeup or did any of that glammy kind of stuff outside Kiss or not. Giants, I don't know. Giraffe, I don't know. Gorky Park, I've heard of. They're supposed to be here for early work. I don't know though, their music itself. Godheart, I don't know. Great White, yes. Griva, I don't know. Guardian, I don't know. Guns N' Roses, okay. Glam is acceptable with GNR, especially up until Lies. Glam is 100% acceptable up until Lies. After Lies, I would say technically we're going on onstage behavior and antics and stuff like that. Even going with Lies, there's plenty of ones that say GNR belongs more in shock rock with their stage antics and their behavior on par with say Iggy Pop, sort of, than they belong in glam, sort of. However, I would just classify Guns N' Roses as a hard rock band, period. That's it. No glam, no shock, no nothing. Just hard rock. That's it. And call it a day there. Listing GNR as a metal band, I've always had issues with. GNR to me has always been, when it comes to like the 80s, 90s, GNR is definitively hard rock. Metallica is definitively heavy metal. My cats are definitively driving me nuts again. All right. After that, we go to Sammy Hagar. No. Maybe. Sammy's just a rocker. Hagar, Schroen, Aronson, Shriek. I'm going to guess and say that's a supergroup comprising Sam Hagar and other various musicians. And I'm going to say maybe Hanoi Roxy. Okay. Hardcore Superstar. I don't know. Harem Scare. Maybe. I don't know on that one. Heat. I don't know outside their name. Heaven's Edge. I don't know at all. Helix. I've seen live. And yeah, okay. I'll let Helix slide a little bit as Canadian Glam. Hollywood Rose. Yeah, okay. Holy Soldier. I don't know. Honeymoon Suite. Definitely. House of Words. I don't know. Hurricane. I don't know. Icon. I don't know. It's Alive. I don't know. Aside from the movie title. Jackal, I don't know enough to say. Jailhouse, I don't know. Jebboy, I don't know. Johnny Crash, I do not know. Judas Priest, the Turbo album, I know. Junkyard, I don't know. Sorry, but Judas Priest, like Black Sabbath, is just metal. No shock rock, no anything else. Just metal. That's it. Charisma, I know by name. That's it. Keel, I don't know. Kick-Axe, I've heard of. Kick Tracy, I've heard of. Killer Dwarves, I've heard of. King Cobra, I've heard of. Kingdom Come, I've heard of. But I've only heard of all of those. Kiss, I know. Kiss as glam metal. In the 80s, yeah. Definitely in the 80s. Kiss and Dynamite, you sort of know by name only. Kicks, I know by name. Crocus says 80s work. I've seen their 80s videos. They're definitely glam in their 80s videos. LA Guns, yes. The Las Vegas, I don't know. Leviticus, I don't know outside of the Bible. Lillian X, I don't know. Leon or Lion, sorry, Leon. Oh my God, Lion. Fucking idiot I am. No, I don't know Lion. I know White Lion, but not Lion. Little Caesar, I only know the pizza joint. Pizza. Lizzie Borden, I've heard of. I've heard of London. I've never heard of Lord Tracy. Never heard of Loudness. Never heard of Love and Hate. Love/Hate. Linum or Linum, I'm not sure how that's pronounced. That tells you exactly right there. Lynch Mob, I have heard of, and I'm surprised to be there. Madam X, I don't know. Magdalene, I don't know. Ingve Malmsteen, most definitely. Manic Street Preachers, Generation Tourists, and Gold Against the Soul Era, I have no clue. I've heard of Maniac Street Preachers, that's where that ends. Macaulay Shanker Group, nope. McQueen Street, nope. Michael Monroe, nope. Motley Crue, most definitely. They, like Alice Cooper and David Bowie, belong, well, not Bowie doesn't belong in glam metal, but like Alice, Motley Crue belongs in glam rock, glam metal, and shock rock. Montrose, the Mean Era, maybe, I'm not sure that one. Mr. Big, I classify them just as a 80s band, really. I don't want to classify them as glam. They never really felt glam to me. Murder Dolls. Okay, funny. I mentioned Murder Dolls. I thought it was funny. They were Murder Dolls and Motley Crue. I thought it was funny. Both of them were missing off of the shock rock list, but they both got included on the glam list. That's really interesting because Murder Dolls should be on both. I would put Murder Dolls actually possibly on the shock rock more than the glam. Nasty Idols. I don't know. Vince Neil. Yes, obviously Vince is glam. Metal versus rock. That's debatable. Nelson. Glam metal. Like they're one of those bands that straddle that line. Night Ranger, another one that kind of straddles that line where are they glam metal or glam rock? They really. Nitro, I don't know. Alda Nova, I don't know. Ted Nugent, Penetrator era. I don't want to say anything Ted Nugent is ever glam. Ever. Just, no, it feels wrong. It feels wrong, but I understand why. Because when you look at the way that Ted dresses and shows up on stage and the clothes that he wears, how his hair looks, stuff like that, I get why he gets thrown into there, but it feels so wrong at the same time. The Nips. I don't know really. Odin, I don't know. I've heard of them, let's put it. Ozzy Osbourne, glam metal. You know what? I can accept Ozzy getting put into glam metal. He did wear a lot of blue eyeshadow in the 80s. And then from blue eyeshadow went into the really thick eyeliner. So, I can go with Ozzy doing glam. Ozzy Putnik, never heard of. Oh my God. This, I want to say, is a Swedish, Russian, or something like that band because Ozvajaki? I butchered that. I have no clue. Pantera 80s work. I've never heard Pantera's 80s work, but I've always heard that, yes, it is in fact glam. One of these days, I'd love to get my hands on that early Pantera music. Poison, most definitely. The Poodles, no clue. Pretty Boy Floyd, I've at least heard of. Pretty Maids, no clue. Phantom Blue, no clue. Pandora's late 80s work, I don't know. Quiet Riot, 86 to 88, okay, sure. Fire Blaze, I don't know. Rat, yes. Reckless Love, don't know. Return, don't know. City Angels, don't know. David Lee Roth, yes. Rough Cut, don't know. Roxanne, don't know. Roxas, don't know. Roxy Blue, don't know. Sacred Warrior, don't know. Saigon Kick. I know a name, and from what I do know, I believe they belong in that category. Saints and Sinners, don't know. Santa Cruz, don't know. Soraya, don't know. Satan's Side, don't know. Scorpions, ooh. Oh, that's a tough call, but yeah, I've seen the Scorpions live. I saw Scorpions live in the 90s. They were definitely rocking a very close to a glam look still even in the 90s. So yeah, I would love Scorpions. The Scream, I don't know. Seven Hags, I don't know. Seventh Key, I don't know. Shark Island, I don't know. Shortino, no clue. Shotgun Messiah, I've at least heard of. Shout, no clue. Sister Nut, Scooter Rope, definitely. Skinny Rose, Sebastian Bach, without a doubt. Definitely glam. Slaughter, yes. Mark Slaughter, I don't know why he's in here separately. Sleaze Bees, I don't know. Sleaze spelled with only one E, I don't know. Slick Toxic, I've heard of, but don't know. Smash Glads, I don't know. Sons of Angels, I don't know. Silk Gang, don't know. Spinal Tap, yes. Yes. I love that they put Spinal Tap in here. Spread Eagle, I don't know. Stage Dolls, I don't know. Steeler, I don't know. Steel Heart, I've at least heard of. Steel Panther, most definitely. Stricken, I don't know. Striper. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Hold on. Sorry, trying to sneeze it. Okay, there we go. I don't want to have to stop this and start again. My apologies for the sneezes. Striper's interesting because Striper's Christian metal. So to have Striper mixed in here with the glam metal, which is like the debaucherous of the debauchery, is just fun and interesting. But yeah, by all intents and purposes, based on their work, Striper deserves to be in there. Takara, Eternal Faith era, don't know. Tesla, yes. Thor, that, I have covered some Thor. The Thor is interesting. I want to say that it does make sense to put Thor into the glam category, but I think Thor belongs more under No, yeah, I guess. You know, like, they're Canadian, so I can't say, like, they belong more under the Wobble, because, you know, I kind of want to stick them under the Wobble or a lot of that European stuff that was coming out in the 80s and that, more so than put them into the Glam. The only reason the Glam would be in there is because of the showmanship, but the showmanship was kind of Hollywood-based with the makeup and that, because of their look. But okay, Thor is Canadian Glam. We'll take it. We'll move on. Helix on one side, Thor on the other. Tiger Tails, I recognize the name. TNT, I recognize the name. Tokyo Blade, I recognize the name. Tora, I recognize the name. Towers of London, I recognize the name. But with all those, I just recognize the name. I can't say. Treat, T-Ride, I don't know either of those. Then we got Toto. I'm saying Toto, 84 to 89. I would never call Toto metal under any circumstance. And I don't know about Glam. Glam feels wrong with Toto as well. I just want to say, realistically, when it comes to Toto, I just want to say yacht rock. Is there yacht metal? Triumph, Thunder 7 era, back Canadians again. And I have no clue on that one. I don't know enough Triumph, and I don't know enough about them to say. Trickster, I only know the name. TSOL, I only know the name. Tough with TUFF, I only know the name. Twisted Sister is definitely Glam for sure. Taiketo, I don't know. Steven Tyler really should be on here solo because he was never metal. Ugly Kid Joe, not that I remember, but maybe. Vane, don't know. Veins of Jenna, don't know. Van Halen, no. David Lee Roth era, yes. Other than that, they don't belong in metal. They're a rock band. They definitely, in early, I have discussed this, I covered every Van Halen album. When it comes to certain albums, they definitely bridge a line where you're not sure if they're trying to be a hard rock band or an LA metal band. But I will always just liken Van Halen to being a rock band, a hard rock band, or a rock band at the end of the day. And once again, only Glam because of David. I don't think Sammy's Glam. Vanendium, I don't know. Vandal, I don't know. Vandenberg, I don't know really. It says Alibi era. The Vinnie Vincent Invasion. Yeah, Vinnie Vincent, definitely. Every picture I've seen from him in that era definitely was glammy. Vixen was most definitely Glam. I don't know much about Vixen outside of a couple songs and their videos. They are definitely one of those bands that got screwed, though, because metal was an old boys club at the time. They should have done better than they did, I think. I don't know how much better, but they should have done better than they did. War Babies, I don't know. Warlock, I'm surprised is on here because I usually hear them associated as a doom metal or a stoner metal band. Warrant, most definitely. Wasp is the reason why we're even here in the first place. This all started with talking about Wasp and how I thought that their gimmick is what hurt them. We are Harlots, White Cross, Whitesnake, yeah, definitely. I mean, 80s were definitely Glam for sure. Still watch their videos. White Lion, I want to say yes. White Tiger, I don't know. One way or another. Say Wigwam, I don't know to say one way or the other, although that's a surprising name. Winger, okay. Winger's another one where I have covered one album from Winger. I'm not a Winger fan. I think Winger's best music time was when he was with Alice Cooper, based on everything I've heard. And that's not because he was with Alice Cooper, that's because the stuff he was releasing when he was with Alice Cooper was top notch. I don't want to talk crap about Winger because Beavis and Butthead have done enough damage. But I also don't necessarily believe that Winger belong in Glam. Or you want to say LA metal? Sure. You want to say LA rock? Definitely. You want to say hard rock? Definitely. But I don't think they deserve the title of Glam on top of all the other stigma. Not really. Maybe a little, but not really. Winter Rose, I don't know. Wrathchild, metal for sure. Glam, I'm not sure. That would be Paul Di'Anno's band after he left Iron Maiden, for anybody that doesn't know. And from what I know of Wrathchild, they're still technically, they beat Nawabum, technically without beating Nawabum. X Japan I've heard of, that's it. X-Center I've heard of, that's it. XYZ, wow, I didn't realize they fell into metal. They fell into no. But I've heard of them, that's it. YNT, same thing. They got them listed for that for 84 to 90. I only know all those by name though. Zebra I only know by name, and the Zeros I only know by name. All right, wow. This has been a long, long list already. Going through all this stuff, like all those names there, as you can tell, a lot of those, if I don't even know the band, they clearly didn't have any form of real staying power. Or nothing that overly jumped out about them. Or, maybe they had a single. A lot of those bands had a single. Even the ones I know. And that's because I talked about this heavily on the shock rock. If you're all look and all show, but absolutely no substance musically, it doesn't matter. You're done. Like, once again, like, Accept really, I don't know if Accept even should be on there, but I don't know the specific era they're talking about. Okay, Bon Jovi should never be listed as metal. Should have been listed as glam rock without. But Bon Jovi is a perfect example. Bon Jovi was definitely glam during the most glammiest time of glam, to the point where he said it himself. He hated doing interviews because the interviews became more about his hair product than they came about the music. He cared about the music. And when it comes to Bon Jovi, as much as I like to make fun of Bon Jovi and tease and stuff like that, he's released a lot of good tunes over a lot of good years. Now, when you get past a certain period with Bon Jovi, you could argue that all he's getting is one, maybe two songs per CD, so it slows down a little bit. But that happens with a lot of bands once they get past the true prime era, you know? Like, I could say that, you know, and when I say one or two songs, I mean one or two singles. I don't mean one or two songs in general that are good. You know, a lot of good album cuts. Damn Yankees. I've covered both their albums. And I was a big Damn Yankees fan when the Damn Yankees were out. Like, I was the only person I knew of that was a Damn Yankees fan and regularly listened to them. And when I was running the music in our cafeteria at lunch, I'd slip Damn Yankees in there even, man, because I love the Damn Yankees. But only the first album. The second album was complete trash. And if you watch my reviews, you'll know that. There are parts of the Damn Yankees, once again, they definitely had songs that had that glammy era sound to them. And that production for sure, but that's not the type of band that they were. They weren't a glam band. You watch any of their videos, they're just a bunch of guys that are playing rock. That's it, man. You know, Tommy Shaw might have a little makeup on, maybe. Jack Blades, maybe. You know, Ted's not having anybody put any fucking makeup on him. So, you know, I think just Ted being in the band rules out glam. Where I'm going with all this, though, is a lot of these bands, like, okay, Damn Yankees are weirdly getting their renaissance right now. And they had 4 really good tunes off of one album, but all they had is one album. So, you know, did they have lasting power? No. The record label literally paid them to go away after the second album. Frehley's Comet, did it have staying power? No. That's why Ace went back to Kiss. But that was more because Ace had other issues. You know, Hanoi Rocks, another band. You know the name, but why do you know the name? You know the name because you saw the Motley Crue Dirt movie, and you know that it was the drummer from, I think it was the drummer from Hanoi Rocks, or am I mixing it up with one of the other bands? Who died in the car crash with Vince, you know? LA Guns, you know the name LA Guns, but you know the name LA Guns because half of Guns N' Roses came from LA Guns. You know, you keep going with this list, going through and through and through, you know, you can see why some bands stay and some bands don't. If Pantera had stayed with just their glam period, they never would have gotten successful because they could not make that gimmick work for them. The second they got rid of that and turned into just a pure metal band, though, man, it worked for them. So we're going to take this back to the beginning. All right, so this whole thing all started with me talking about gimmicks. It all started with talking about gimmicks technically and how it hurt Wasp when I was talking about how Wasp was a victim of the LA metal scene. And, you know, I went through a huge thing with shock rock, pointing out how, you know, there are bands you know, but when it comes to mainstream popularity, mainstream longevity, it's only the bands with the music, with the exception of Gwar, thanks to Jerry. Okay, so with the exception of Gwar, it's always the music that makes these bands last. I thought Lordy was going to bust out and be bigger than Gwar because the first song, Hard Rock Hallelujah, was genius. Beautiful. And I know they did a couple songs after that were pretty good as well. But then And it's a real shame. Also, you know, so when you go through here, and then there's other ones as well, like Skid Row. You know Skid Row from when Sebastian Bach was in there. Myself personally, I have, to the best of my knowledge, have never heard a single Skid Row song after Sebastian Bach left. I don't know anybody that owns any albums, anything. And when you look at Sebastian Bach, who I have seen live, Sebastian Bach is a great vocalist. But if it wasn't for the fact that he's as outlandish as he is, and he is willing to prostitute himself for things like Supergroup or, you know, like when he did the Gilmore Girls, you know, he's done other things to keep his name out there. Otherwise, he would be pretty much as Skid Row is now. And I've seen Sebastian Bach live. That dude is one hell of a powerhouse vocalist. I got to see Kings of Chaos live. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Kings of Chaos, comprised of... Why? I noticed... I don't think I said Billy Idol's name in all of these ones I've listed off with Glam and Shock. And Billy Idol definitely should be in there. Did I mention Billy Idol at all? It was Billy Squire. Yeah, no, Billy Idol. Billy Idol should be on this list. Billy Idol definitely did a glam period. Billy Idol's a good example too. You know, like you take guys like that. They did have their names carried on, yes. Do people remember songs they released? Yes. But they've died out, you know, like they've really, they had a time period and they couldn't last beyond that time period because they had a gimmick and they were stuck to that gimmick, and the gimmick didn't allow for enough growth, or they didn't have the music. Alice Cooper will always be Alice Cooper and David Bowie are the best examples when it comes especially to glam, of staying faithful to being glam or shock rock while still growing and evolving, changing your gimmick, evolving your music, changing your music, and still yet being faithful to who you are. David Bowie did go through a period where he refused to play a lot of the greatest hits and stuff like that because he really wanted to focus on the new stuff. And I have a lot of props and appreciation for that. And I wish a lot of bands would still do that. But it's not the record labels paying for the tours anymore. A lot of the tours are now greatest hits tours for reasons because that's what the fans want to see, you know. Alice Cooper still will play new stuff, but he'll only play one or two songs off a new album, then they kind of disappear for a while. But Alice has also got a lot of albums to pick from. Alice could not do, in a 90-minute show, Alice Cooper could not perform one song from every album. He has that many albums. It's impossible. He'd have to do, I did the math on it. Even if you went with, I think it was, yeah, I think it was, it would be, if you went with like his shortest song off every album, you might be able to pull off one song from every album. But that's a really slim maybe because most of his hit singles from the 90s in particular, even the 80s, were over 4 minutes. So might not be simple to do that. But, you know, and same with Bowie. Bowie had quite the discography as well, you know. And that's why they last, because they kept evolving, they kept growing, and they kept releasing good music. And when their music was not as good, or they got a little too experimental, a little too crazy, yeah, they had drop downs as well. You know, Alice Cooper from 81 to 86, you know, there wasn't a whole lot coming out from him other than guest spots, because it literally was the blackout period and then the rehab period after the blackout period. Bowie had the same problem. He had his drug period too, where he had to rehab afterwards, and he got a little too crazy on certain things. And that, and these things happen, but they had the music to back them up on top of the theatrics and the gimmicks. Some of these other bands, yes, they did have music to back them up beyond, but they got stuck into a niche. Like Wasp, for example, I haven't listened to anything outside the first two albums. I think I've heard maybe the odd song here, the odd song there. But everything I have seen, Wasp kind of dug themselves in deeper and heavier, which is going to pull yourselves out of the mainstream even more, you know? Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson are both really smart in the senses that even with the different styles they've gone through, a lot of their music still has a danceability to it. That's not the word I want to use. I'm going to use you know what? You throw on a Rob Zombie album, you can fuck to a Rob Zombie album, man. And because of that, Rob Zombie's going to have long-lasting sustainability, you know? An album that you can easily get your groove on and fuck to, you're good to go. And some of these glam albums had that, and then they got a lot harder, heavier, and you lose that. So that also kind of starts to kill you as well. But I think a lot of them, they get stuck into their own shtick. And I think Wasp is the best example of that, because everything I do know of Wasp, like looking at photos and stuff like that, same thing applies to Motley Crue, going through right up until they did the rehab, and then even including the release of Dr. Feelgood, though. If you watch, they sink more and more into how they're perceived and the stereotypes of how they're perceived. And they lean more and more into the big hair and the makeup and the wardrobes and what the sets look like for their videos and this, that, and the other thing. And yeah, they're releasing some decent music, but that's all it is decent music. And, you know, when you release, Theater of Pain is my favorite example for this. When your best song on the album is the ballad, and the only song on the album that gets any major recognition is the ballad. I believe there was a cover. I think the Smoking in the Boys' Room cover was on there too. That's not helping the argument either. So when those, you know, and I like their cover of Smoking in the Boys' Room, and I like Home Sweet Home, don't get me wrong, but even with Home Sweet Home, they still redid it later, so they had a better version of it. Because they all just kind of relied way too much on their gimmicks and kind of stopped worrying about music. And in Motley's case, their gimmicks were debauchery. I'm trying to think of some other ones on here that I'm looking at. Ozzy. Okay, if we're going to put Ozzy into the glam metal category, which arguably you could, okay? Ozzy wore a lot of blue eyeshadow, as I've previously mentioned. That was his worst years. The music was really good. You know, he had some really good stuff with Jakey Lee, and technically he was still in that era when he picked up Zach. And he did. He had some really good tunes in there. But Ozzy himself couldn't even keep it together. Like, you wonder how he functioned. You know, and I really do think that when it comes to the Jake E. Lee albums, that Jake E. Lee was pulling a lot more weight on those albums than most people want to give him credit for, along with the other musicians. When it comes to Ozzy being solo, I have some biases, and I often question the lyrics, I often question how much Ozzy actually wrote musically and lyrically. Because in Black Sabbath, generally Geezer wrote the lyrics. Ozzy might help with the lyrics, but generally Geezer wrote the lyrics as a rule. In the Ozzy years anyways. Afterwards, I know when Dio came in, Dio was more about writing the lyrics. But when I look at the lyrics, let's say even Ozzy wrote all the lyrics in Black Sabbath. If you look at the lyrics in Black Sabbath and you compare them to the lyrics in Ozzy was a more creative writer in the Black Sabbath years than he was in the Ozzy years as a lyricist. And don't care what you say, man. At the end of the day, Ozzy's last show, yeah, everybody wanted to see Ozzy, but the last band on that stage was Black Sabbath. So if you're one of those Ozzy over Black Sabbath people, your choice, but you can suck it. On that note, prime example actually of another band in here talking about image over substance. The Darkness released their first album and basically disappeared. Why? Because, well, there were definitely a couple decent songs on that album. They were a gimmick band. And to say that they weren't a gimmick band, dude, I can't even think of the dude's name right now. The lead vocalist, I love when I was watching his show for a while there regularly until the Darkness all of a sudden got back together for like a 20th anniversary kind of thing and started releasing new music again. But it sounds exactly the same still, which is cool. But it's a gimmick. It's a good gimmick, but it's still a gimmick, and it doesn't have the longevity. You know, the Darkness can be out there on tour doing the state fair circuit with all the other 80s bands that are still around that are doing the state fair circuit. You know, that. All right. So yeah, I guess, gimmicks are great, but as I've said, and I've gone over and over and over, gimmicks can hurt you as much as they can help you. Sometimes you have to get rid of the gimmick to become a better band. Sometimes you just got to realize that the gimmick is not where you need to be. Pantera is a perfect example of a band getting rid of the gimmick. Slayer is another great example of a band succeeding after getting rid of the gimmick. Arguably, Alice Cooper's biggest touring album was actually the least gimmicky, and that would be the Trashes the World Tour. You go put on the Trashes the World Tour, there's showmanship, sure. And there's makeup, and there's some, you get some of the normal stuff. You get, a lot of the key points and hits you have to get. But it's the most stripped back, basic kind of show of all the shows. Like when you compare it to The Nightmare Returns, Brutal Planet, There are, like, and as I'm going on mentioning all those, there's, Nightmare is going to ring for a lot of you. Nightmare Returns probably won't. Brutal Planet, maybe, But the harder Alice leans in the gimmicks, sometimes the harder the gimmick pushes back against Alice. That's one of the things in the 80s. He went really glam in the 80s for sure, to a degree. Oh my God. And that's where the big pushback came from too. Anyways, folks, at the end of the day, if you do not have enough diversity in your substance, enough of the substance, your gimmick's just not going to help you out. End of story. I'm done. Wow, I have rambled on way too long about glam and about shock rock. I'm done. I'm over. Let me know anything down below in the comments. On your way down there, like button, subscribe button, bell for notifications. If you hit those, appreciate it. A couple links worth checking out. Otherwise, folks, peace, love, take care.